Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Footballguys Best Ball Show. As always, I am here with James Brimacombe, and this week, training camps have officially opened. So there are going to be a lot of guys that we are going to be keeping close eye on today to see how they are being affected with this recent news. James, obviously, we're going to be looking at Trey Lance, who we just recently got word that Kyle Shanahan told Jimmy Garoppolo that it is his team. It is Trey Lance's team. So we'll see if that 7th round ADP goes up at all. Isaiah McKenzie taking first team reps with the Buffalo Bills. If he gets that coveted slot role in Buffalo, his ADP should see a huge spike. I was in a draft the other day where I saw him go 150th overall. We've also got James Robinson, who a lot of people thought wouldn't be ready for week 1. He missed the PUP list and is actually out practicing at camp right now. So there are a lot of guys that we are going to be paying close attention to today. Outside of those three, is there anyone else you can think of, James, that should see some pretty big ADP shifts just over the last few days?
I can't pinpoint anything at the moment, but yeah, just it's actually nice to get some news and kind of play around with it and kind of go from there. So yeah, there's so much that's going to happen, so much that's going to be said in the next few weeks. So it's a fun time, and you just kind of have to dissect it a little bit. So.
And it's really tough because it's this delicate balance. Like, on one hand, you want to stick to your priors. Like, we have spent all offseason analyzing how we think these situations are going to take out or shake out. On the other hand, you don't want to be completely deaf to camp news because there is some valuable information that's going to come out of there. So it's really, kind of a delicate balancing act of sticking to your priors while also listening to the news, but not overreacting. And we were, I hate to say it, but the first episode we did, I think we might have been a little bit overreactive to some news. We recorded the day that Rob Gronkowski retired. We drafted Cameron Brate in the 14th, 15th round. Seemed like a great deal at the time, but since then he's fallen into the 16th, 17th. So, it happens to everybody. No matter how much you're drafting, you can be victim to some news.
Yeah, later picks like that, it's not quite as bad, but yeah, you definitely could kind of go. It's a roller coaster up and down, so you just kind of you're gonna hit some, you're gonna lose on some. So,
yep. It's been a rough couple days for me. I've been hyping up Jamison Crowder. He hasn't even shown up to camp yet, as he's dealing with soreness somehow before the season even kicked off. And then I'm sure you saw that video going around today where everybody is clowning Evan Ingram. His first rep, he dropped the ball. I'm not sure if he caught that one or not, but it's the two guys that I've been drafting pretty heavily this offseason, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't sweating a little bit.
So you should be the opposite. You should be excited about that. So if you believe in those guys and that's happening, they're just gonna fall further down, and you're just gonna build better teams based on your beliefs in those kind of players. So yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing.
Evan Ingram is a guy that I'm not overly concerned about. One drop, obviously, that's going to make the rounds and go viral because of his history with drops. But I do want to talk about this Buffalo situation because, I have been very firmly in the Jamison Crowder camp that I thought he was a fantastic value, getting drafted outside of the top 60, and, just penciling him in for, what I expected to be at least 100 targets. But Isaiah McKenzie is drawing a lot of buzz out of camp right now, getting those first team reps. Is that something where you're reading into this, or do you think it's just because Jamison Crowder isn't there, Isaiah McKenzie's getting the de facto snaps, or is this something where you're thinking Isaiah McKenzie could end up being that lead slot guy?
It's kind of hard with that situation, that depth chart. There's a lot of good, talented players there in Buffalo. So, they have the best quarterbacks. So you buy in on Crowder. I don't think it's the worst. And if you buy in on McKenzie, it's not the worst either. So I think both are good buys, but I think you're probably going to see both of them balance out and kind of be priced right about the same, just based on this kind of news over the next week, I would assume. But I try to see this kind of news, and then I want to look at the rest of the roster. So I want to look at more of Dawson Knox and Devin Singletary. So that's what I get out of this news. Those two are going to be my players that I like. So. And I think their value might fall a little bit too, just because McKenzie rises. So,
yeah, and Dawson Knox is a guy that I was never really fully against Dawson Knox, but I've been much more on board recently after looking at how his change in usage kind of shifted at the halfway point of the season. But here we got Gabe Davis himself in the chat here telling us that Isaiah McKenzie is legit. So hey, from the mouth of Gabe Davis himself, I think we gotta take gotta listen to that a little bit. But here we are. We are doing a BBM entry today, which we've been doing quite a few of lately. And what do you want to do, James? We talked about this. It's something we've done in the past where we start off, very bully tight end, where we go Kelsey and Andrews. Do we want to try to do that today, or should we just do what we've been doing and let these first 5 rounds kind of fall to us, and then work it out after that?
I think it's fun. You've seen my screenshots. I've tried the Kelsey, Andrews, and then I just follow it with Mahomes and Lamar. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to go that extreme. It's hard.
I've,
You're at pick 8 here, so it's hard to know what to do. Like, you might get
yeah.
Eckler, you might get Henry. I mean, they're all kind of the same, so it gets boring. You keep doing those same builds over and over. So
And that, I've been sticking pretty tight to ADP, and I'll have these teams where I draft, and I think that it's an awesome team. And then I realized, well, that's right on par with ADP, and I'm sure a lot of people have these teams. I drafted one the other day that I kind of tweeted out about how it was just a dog squad. It was Jamar Chase, Debo Samuel, AJ Brown, DK Metcalf. I shared that, and then somebody responded, "Oh, I just did that same exact draft with these same 4 wide receivers." And it just kind of makes sense. If you got that 5 pick and you get Jamar Chase, then when you're in the mid-second, Debo Samuel is going to be there. In the mid-third, AJ Brown is going to be there. And when you're volume drafting, you definitely want to do things to differentiate a little bit.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, you want it to be still fun, right? You don't want it just to be this monotonous, like you're just doing another draft. So I'm going to follow the draft board, follow all the strategies I've ever learned. And it's not as fun. Maybe you lose a little bit of edge, maybe you lose, but I think it kind of just adds some more fun, gives you some more ideas, and you kind of learn as you build them. It's like, hey, wait, that didn't work, or that did work. I kind of like how this looks. Let me try this. Maybe the next draft you do in a different round, you try something different. So,
And at a certain point, you kind of know what your teams are going to look like just from the spot that you pull. Like if you get the 12th spot, and 12, 13, there's really a pool of like 4 or 5 players that you're going to end up. It's going to be Travis Kelsey, Devontae Adams, CeeDee Lamb, Joe Mixon. And you know that that's just kind of what your team is going to look like. So I think that there is something to be said trying to get unique. Mike Sanda is a good friend of mine. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him or not. He does a lot of high stakes league, but volume as well. He drafts a lot of volume, and his whole thing is trying to get as unique as possible. And he says anything within a half round is not a reach. So he showed me a draft that he did recently where he started off at the 1-2 turn with DeAndre Swift and Saquon Barkley. And sure, it might sound like a reach because we have ADP embedded in our brains and just ingrained there, and we can't even fathom taking Saquon Barkley that early. But is it really that crazy taking Saquon Barkley in the early second round as opposed to Leonard Fournette, Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, some of the other guys that are typically going there?
I mean, the way it's going with Barkley, he's going to be a first round pick here shortly. Like people keep driving him up. And I mean, if we see it on the field and we see him good reports on him, then I think he's only going to go right out that turn every single time. So.
Yep. We got DJ Mitchell in the chat here asking where your backwards hat is.
Yeah, I don't know. I forgot that one. So I love all the backwards hat wearing podcasters. There's some nothing but love. Nothing but love.
Exactly, yeah. So taking a look here, I like the way this shook out. Joe Mixon is a guy that I don't want to say aggressively targeting, but I have no problem taking Joe Mixon, as early as 13 or 14, in the early second. So to get him in the mid-second, I think is a great value there. I can't really understand. I mean, I can understand why with the injury history and the lack of pass catching, but at the end of the day, I mean, Joe Mixon, he's going to see 250 carries on an explosive offense. That's got to be worth something, right?
I think that's you can't get mad about grabbing a Bengals player. You're getting a little discount because the pass catchers people are just in love with Chase and Higgins and Burrow. So yeah, you're getting mixed in second round this year every time. So
another guy falling right into our lap that I've been pretty actively grabbing here, Michael Pittman. I feel like we get Michael Pittman on a lot of these teams. He saw a real ADP spike. I mean, this guy was going in the 5th and 6th round a few months ago, then spiked up into the early 3rd. And it seems like people are cooling off on him now because I've been pretty consistently getting him in the mid to back end of the 3rd round. I know you weren't crazy about his cost a few weeks ago, but how do you feel about him here in the mid to late 3rd round?
I mean, yeah, I'm kind of catching and getting on board with Pittman, but like I'm never kind of reaching on him. But breaking ties, I'll start choosing him now just to kind of get him in my portfolio. But yeah,
I mean, are,
I missed that window where it was fifth rounder, so I can't get that anymore. So yeah, I just have to kind of make sense in my builds now, going different with them.
so another guy, and it looks like he was drafted already. I'm interested to see where he went, but we've got word that Alvin Kamara, here he goes, all the way at 26, that he is likely going to be avoiding a suspension this year. I had kind of been avoiding him for fear of that suspension. I didn't want to draft a guy that, there were rumors that he might be going to jail for a whole year, but it looks like it's going to be pushed out to next year at the soonest. So is Alvin Kamara somebody that you're kind of actively trying to grab now? Because realistically, if we know that Alvin Kamara is avoiding a suspension, he should be getting drafted right in the same tier as Dalvin Cook, right? I mean, a late first round, is that where you'd expect him to settle in if we get word that he's not suspended?
No, I would assume like he could be the right with Barkley too. I'd assume like if he knew he wasn't getting suspended, he would probably be a first rounder, almost like right there at the turn. I've actually haven't been drafting him either, but just so you're gonna get suckered into
I mean,
Travis
we're
Etienne.
sticking to 18, and I gotta
And we're
say
just
though, here we are in the early fourth. I think this is a pretty good value here. I don't
yeah,
really hate this. Or I'm sorry, that's early fourth round. And I mean, his ADP had skyrocketed, and this is one of those things where I've been a firm believer in Etienne's talent. Just the pass catching upside on a team that's going to have a lot of negative game scripts. Linking back up with his college quarterback, I've been beating the drum for Etienne. But once he slipped into that third round ADP, I pumped the brakes. That was just way too rich for me. But then we get a video of James Robinson coming out and running, and all of a sudden, here we see Etienne falling. Almost a full round behind ADP, so I'm okay taking him there in the fourth.
yeah. So he's same. So back to Kamara. So yeah, I've started drafting him. I really like him in 3 running back builds to start. You get him in the third round. So like I like him there. Like even if there's a suspension or whatever, you're not killing yourself. And if there's nothing and you get third round Kamara with 2 running backs and you just start him in the flex, like that's pretty powerful. So I've been doing that a lot the last couple of weeks. But before that I was off him. Like ETN, yeah, I've just like I don't know. I just haven't never felt good about him. I never felt good about James Robinson either. So both of those players I just haven't been drafting. I've been more on Trevor Lawrence in the passing game, just at the huge discounts. So I'm kicking
And,
myself for the Robinson stuff, but ETN,
yeah,
I'm fine not having any shares of him really. So
yeah. And it's really tough taking a step back. There's been a few guys that I started hyping up early in the offseason that have seen huge ADP spikes, and we just happen to have 2 of them on this team: Michael Pittman, Travis Etienne, but also Alan Lazard. And last year we saw this with Antonio Brown, where you and I were both, or I'm sorry, it wasn't you and I, it was Phil Alexander over at Footballguys. We were beating the drum for Antonio Brown, and he was getting drafted in the 120s. Then his ADP shoots up into the 70s, and all of a sudden he's not that great of a value anymore. So it's kind of tough when you have player takes, because as ADPs change, so should your take on a player. And sometimes you don't even realize how much they're creeping up until one day you pull the trigger on Travis Etienne in the third round and you go, whoa, whoa, whoa. When did this happen? I was drafting this guy as a 5th round running back, and all of a sudden I'm drafting him as a 3rd rounder. So I feel like it's very important when you're doing these volume drafts, like once a week, just to step back, take a look at the board, see who's shifted. And that's really where your article comes into play every single week. It really helps to quantify those ADP changes.
yeah, and a tournament like this, it's like I don't know, maybe we should do like an article more centered around how Best Ball Mania just the changes in ADP, right? So like ETN and Pittman, like people probably have those in 6th, 7th round, like the start of this contest. So I don't mind like drafting them in just say like a new puppy tournament that drafts and you kind of have like a do-over kind of thing. But this like I wonder if it's not worth actually drafting those kind of players right now at their ADP. And I don't know, just because there's other people out there with the same kind of players, but they have stronger builds. And but yeah, I don't know. But also, closer you get to the season, I felt like the better my teams are always built. So
Yep.
like
Yeah.
it's
But
kind of
so are
hard.
everybody's. Yeah, that's kind of, your teams get better, but so do everybody else's. So it makes it a little
No.
tough. Oh, man, I was hoping this wasn't going to happen, but hey, we said we'd stick with ADP, and here we are, round 5, drafting a naked Patrick Mahomes. So we will cross our fingers and hope that Juju makes it back to us. But man, I got to say, I had Josh Larkey on my show a couple days ago, the launch pad, and we were talking about best ball with Jared Smola. and he sold me on Sky Moore. I hadn't been, completely against Sky Moore, but I think what happened is my dynasty brain was still looking at Sky Moore through that lens. And Sky Moore, I don't know if you play a lot of dynasty, James, but he got vaulted up into like a late first round pick ahead of guys like George Pickens and James Cook, and his value really got pushed up. You'd think that we'd learn right after CEH was going top 5 as a rookie, but people were going nuts about Sky Moore, and because of that, I had soured on him in best ball, and then realized that that's a little bit silly. I mean, this wide receiver room is still very ambiguous, and Sky Moore is the third cheapest wide receiver that you can draft in Kansas City, and has a chance to realistically be the team's wide receiver 1. So I've been drafting him a little bit more and moving off of Juju.
Yeah, I think Sky Moore, I think his ADP was kind of out of whack there for a little bit. Like he just got super hyped up and it went way up, and then you saw him just kind of fall back down a little bit. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I have been drafting him a little bit more just because the falling ADP. Like I feel like he's priced a little bit better now. So before that, I didn't feel like he was, and that's why I was kind of off of him. It was nothing about him as a player or anything like that. Just the players I could take right around his draft capital. Like I was taking those players.
He's going side by side with Tyler Lockett, which I hate because I love drafting Tyler Lockett. But looking here, where we're at, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Mixon, Travis Etienne, Stephon Diggs, Michael Pittman. I think we need another receiver here. I'm not crazy enough about Elijah Mitchell or A.J. Dillon to take a third running back right now. Do you have a strong take between Cooper or Thielen?
I think you got to play the Cooper angle if Watson's going to play some games.
And that's where I'm at, too. I mean, Amari Cooper, like, same thing. There's just some uncertainty right now. We were talking about this with Alvin Kamara just a little bit ago, but like if Deshaun Watson is getting suspended for half a season, that should change where Cooper is getting drafted. If he's not getting suspended at all, Cooper realistically should probably be getting drafted as like a middling wide receiver too. I'd say top 15, top 20 is probably where Amari Cooper would settle in if we knew we were getting Deshaun Watson for a full season. So he's somebody now, as we're getting more and more reports where it seems like Deshaun Watson might just be looking at a little slap in the wrist. I find myself drafting a lot of Amari Cooper lately.
Yeah, 6th round Amari Cooper's. I think it's a good price right now. Any positive news on Watson? I feel like he's going to go up higher. So,
yeah, a question here from Noah saying, "How do you guys feel about the running back dead zone? The only running backs I like there are the ones with ambiguity about their floor, such as Hall or Etienne, avoiding murky situations like Zeke and Montgomery." Man, we could talk about this so much because I feel like the running back dead zone this year, with the way running backs are getting pushed down the board a little bit. It used to be the dead zone was like rounds 3 to 5. Maybe I'm overthinking this a little bit, James, but to me it feels like the running back dead zone is more like rounds 6 through 8 this year, right?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of how it feels. Just, I mean, I would put like guys still on the board, Antonio Gibson, like he's basically there, but. Like, how do you feel bad about taking them in round 7? I don't know. I have a hard time. I think people are just going to have their guys that they like in the dead zone, and they're going to have their guys that they don't like. I don't think it's going to be all dead zone running backs. I don't want to draft any of them. So I think you kind of still want to take 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah.
And maybe
again, I think it just comes down to like the definition of running back dead zone. And I feel like if you're saying running back dead zone is, it's got to change year to year. It's not locked in like, anybody getting drafted in rounds 3, 4, and 5 is in the running back dead zone. It does change year to year. And this year I feel like it's just been pushed down a little bit. When I don't consider Breece Hall to be in the running back dead zone. Some people might be concerned that Michael Carter is going to cut into his workload. I just don't see it at all. I think Breece Hall is, a guy that you'd, confidently be drafting as a late RB1, early RB2, just about any other season. And I think this year, with so many injuries to running backs last year, the market shifted a little bit, and now running backs are just getting pushed down the board. Last year, like 9 of the top 12 picks were running backs, and now hardly half of the first round is running backs. People are really starting to attack wide receivers this season. So taking a look here, we've got 2 running backs, Joe Mixon and Travis Etienne, Stephon Diggs, Pittman, Amari Cooper, Patrick Mahomes. We have no tight end. We've only got 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers. Obviously we're not taking a QB2 here. That's a little bit too early. Who jumps out to you on this board? I do like Hunter Renfrow. I like Christian Kirk. I like Kadarius Toney. I like Tony Pollard enough. Is Miles Sanders a guy that you're interested in as an RB3, or do you? This is I guess it's not too far off ADP. Make this pick for us, James.
I'd probably just throw in Renfro.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Not a sexy pick, but this guy was a wide receiver one last year. Like, I still struggle to wrap my mind around that because, yeah, his big games were kind of fluky and they only came when Darren Waller was hit. But at the end of the day, he finished as a wide receiver one. I mean, that's pretty impressive. And especially now with him getting drafted as, wide receiver 38, 39. It's not every day that you see a wide receiver one get pushed that far the next season, even with Devontae Adams showing up. I mean, Renfro's ADP was affected more than Jalen Waddles, Devonta Smith, or anybody else. Renfro was the one that really got punished when his team traded for a receiver.
Yeah, no, he was such a difference maker last year. He was fun. Just yeah, who knows what this year? Like I feel like Carr loves him. There's still going to be targets for him. He's just not going to be the number one guy there. Maybe that's a good thing. Like it's not a bad thing. So like there's still going to be plenty for him there.
Now, looking ahead at some of our next picks here, because we were forced into drafting Patrick Mahomes, I'm not one to force stacks too much, but I would like to get another KC guy on here. So I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire and MVS, as much as I'm not too crazy about those guys, are you okay with trying to target these two with our next pick here?
See, I think with that news too on Ross, right? Like he's kind of hitting the IR. So KC, yeah. I feel like those receivers should have a little bit more value now. Like each one, we should probably bump up a little bit. So
yeah,
like I like them all. I like Juju. I like MVS. I like Sky Moore even MVS. More now. Yeah, so
that's the thing. I mean, Sky Moore, his ADP right now is 100. Like you said, all these guys should be a little bit see a little bit of a boost. Our next pick isn't until 104. MVS is off the board. Juju's off the board. It might be a little bit of a reach, but I'm okay taking Sky Moore here. What do you think? I mean, you should see a boost without Justin Moore. It just makes him that much more likely to be the guy to step up. He's not making it back to us with our next pick, and then we get at least something with that Mahomes that we drafted.
I mean, you could do that, or you do CEH, and then you try to get Hardman later. Like that's your options too. But
I like that. We'll go CEH here, and I mean, we'll be hoping for a little bit of a slide, but nothing crazy. We just need Sky Moore to slide 3 spots. ADP to 101. We've got the 104 pick. Let's hope that he can make it back to us. Just pure value. I mean, it was tough to pass on Tony Pollard there. I'm surprised that he is still sliding. But just trying to correlate that Mahomes pick a little bit, because really, I don't think Mahomes deserves to be getting drafted as a QB5 like he is. But if you're going to, you kind of have to build around KC with the rest of your team.
Yeah, I mean, you spend a premium pick on Mahomes, yeah, it's hard. But there's so many ways to stack him. I think still, like even if he didn't get one of his receivers, like I don't think it's the worst to have CEH with him.
Yeah. And then, I mean, even with the auto drafting that worked out, we got Joe Mixon and Diggs. The first 2 picks. We got a little bit of Week 17 correlation there, if that's what gets you going. So, I try to think about that when I'm in these tournament drafts. If I'm doing sit and goes, I don't care about stacking whatsoever. I'm just trying to get healthy guys that I expect to put up a lot of points. But you do kind of have to think a little bit, outside of just scoring points and getting value with these. Like I said, it's not something that I care too much about, but we got CEH under ADP and we're able to link him up with Mahomes, so I don't hate that.
And I think he's a fun kind of running back 3 on a team that you build out. So I mean, so many question marks on him, and people love him or hate him. Pretty much, like you don't see too much positive on him right now, but he still is on one of the best offenses. So I think and he's still young, so I don't know. I think it's still worth it.
And here we got Pang in the chat. I'm here to meet hot singles in my area. Thank you, Davis.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the more low key things he's ever said. So
Pang's a great guy. Connected with him a while back. I mean, you two were the ones that kind of got me into best ball. You two and Phil Alexander last year really pushed me into it. Did about 150 drafts last year and had some fun with it, but man, now I'm doing like 10-15 a night. It's getting a little scary with how much I've been best balling lately. especially my wife's been traveling a lot, so I've got nothing but free time.
Oh, there you go.
Look at that, we got Sky Moore.
I could tell you're being very quiet and just trying to not pay attention.
And honestly, with the two guys that were on the board, I
You
would
could
have
have
been
got
happy with
Pollard
either of
too,
those.
yeah.
Yeah, either Pollard was going to slide to us 20 spots below ADP, or we were going to get Sky Moore to link up with Mahomes. So I'm
So,
very happy with how that worked out.
so I think that's one thing, and I know people have talked about this in the past about stacking. Like if you do take Mahomes at that premium pick, you're going to have a better chance for those players on his team to fall down the board. So I think it's worth taking the gambles. Like, hey, let's take CEH here, and then like you hope Sky Moore falls. Like you could have took Sky Moore, and it would have been fine. It would have worked out.
But then I wouldn't have got CEH, and we'd be looking at, Traylon Burks instead. We'd be looking at Sky Moore and Traylon Burks as opposed to CEH. And yeah, so appreciate you talking me off that ledge and giving me a little lesson of patience there, James.
No, it wasn't me. Sometimes that's just how it happens. So I think that you just have to kind of, if you're a multi-drafter, you just have to be like a little bit of gamble in you and just like, you know what, there's like 25% chance that he could fall. So that's the way. Usually if you see a lot of badges too, that's you're going to get those falls more often. So usually when you don't see badges in your lobby, that's when you're going to get sniped more often, I feel. So
yeah. So what are we looking at with this next pick now? I like Dawson Knox and Tyler Boyd. They both kind of fit in. We've got Mixon already. We've got Stephon Diggs already. So we're already kind of betting on that passing game.
Yeah, let's go Boyd. Or you get your boy Zach Ertz is there too. I feel like we take him every time.
We don't have a tight end.
No, or you got Rashad White. You got Rashad White too. So
love me some Rashad White as well. I actually was just checking my exposure today, and Cole Kmet is finally my number 2 tight end. Zach Ertz has passed up Cole Kmet in my exposure. Cole Kmet was another one of those guys that has seen a bump in ADP, and he saw it quickly. I know you've written some of the spotlights over at Footballguys before. Sometimes those come out a day or two after we write them. Sometimes it takes 2 weeks if we've got a lot on the schedule. And from the time that I wrote that article until it published was about a week and a half. And he was tight end 18 when I wrote the article, tight end 16 by the time the article came out. And I think now, last I saw, he's at like tight end 13 or 14. Yeah, tight end 13. So he's a guy that I've, was really beating the drum for. But again, when ADPs change, so should your takes. And I really like it in Cole Kmet in the 15th, 16th round as tight end 18. Now paying up for him in the 12th or 13th round as tight end 13 isn't quite as fun.
It makes sense to just a young player. Just look, everyone trying to chase those breakout players, right? So he's going to get hyped up throughout the industry, throughout fantasy football. Like people are he's a name that's going to hit like everyone's breakout kind of tight end, right? So you're going to keep seeing them get bumped. They don't add anybody as receiving options there. So, really that's like Fields has to, if you believe in Fields, you have to almost believe in Kmet having a breakout.
Got some DJ Mitchell in the chat just telling us that the Saints just signed Malcolm Brown. Now, I was never really too into Mark Ingram. Even if Alvin Kamara was suspended, I thought it was almost a guarantee that they would bring in another running back and not give a 31-year-old Mark Ingram a full workload. What do you think, though? Them signing Malcolm Brown, is that just a depth camp ad, or do you think that might tip their hat to a possible suspension for Kamara?
I don't know. They're a hard backfield to figure out. Same with Baltimore. Same with like Miami. Like they just have like 5 guys. So you can read into that more, but maybe I don't know. Like I still think Kamara is the guy that you want to draft there, and I don't want any other Saints running backs. That's kind of how I'm looking at that backfield.
Yeah. We got Jay in the chat here saying Sky Moore is ranked 202nd overall on Yahoo, and Kenneth Walker at 79. It is wild seeing ADP differences from one site to another. Man, here we are, and I'm really regretting CEH. I'm really regretting this pick, considering that we are at pick 127 and Ronald Jones is still on the board. What do you think about locking up that backfield with both of these guys, or do you think that's a little bit too minus EV?
Yeah, I don't know. I was on Ronald Jones for a while. I've been backing off, and I've seen him fall. I wouldn't be surprised if he's there your next pick, even maybe
Seriously.
like 2 rounds. Like he's been falling like crazy.
There's a few guys I like here. Nobody really fits in too strongly with the build that we've got going, but I like Jacoby Myers. I like Cole Kmet. I like Madison.
I think you got to get Kmet back to number 1 for your team here. your ownership.
Jacoby Myers is a guy. I was just talking about him on a Twitter space. Those Twitter spaces. I was doing one of those earlier today, and we were talking a little bit. Jacoby Myers, I just can't really figure out why he's getting drafted as wide receiver 59. First of all, that's the earliest any wide receiver is being drafted in New England. I mean, he is being drafted as the wide receiver 1, and he's still going as almost the 60th wide receiver off the board. He put up a top 20 target share last year and just didn't catch touchdowns. But I mean, had this guy stumbled in for, 5 or 7 touchdowns as opposed to 2 touchdowns, we'd probably be looking at him as, a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 this year. But there's no reason to think that he isn't still the Patriots wide receiver 1, still pull a 23-24% target share. Is he somebody you've been actively drafting, or not? Don't really have a firm take on Jacoby Myers?
I think I have like 0% on him, to be honest.
Really?
I feel like Kendrick Bourne is the exact same player, and I can get Kendrick Bourne in round 17 sometimes. So That's why I'm not drafting him, to be honest.
I've been drafting him quite a bit as well. I mean, I know he's not your guy, but I just made a little case for him. We got him around below ADP. We can use another receiver in this build, and now we'll have 14 picks till our next drafts, or till our next pick. So let's kind of take a step back, look at what we got right here, and see what holes we need to fill. Patrick Mahomes as QB1, linked up with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Sky Moore. Overall, our running backs are Joe Mixon, Travis Etienne, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So now we're kind of hitting this sweet spot where I feel like you and I both really like these running backs coming up. It feels like we do this almost every single show. These are the guys that I have the majority of my exposure to, but Darrell Henderson, Tyrion Davis-Price, Khalil Herbert, Darrell Williams. Looks like Kenneth Gainwell was already drafted.
Yeah, somebody's taking him.
Took Kenneth Gainwell
before the 12th round.
Yeah, and I saw that in the draft I did last night too. Yeah, here it is, pick 134. My goodness. Yeah, and they're going pretty heavy with the tight end or with the running backs in this build, but wow, that's I don't want to say a reach, because if you like him, get him, and we had our eyeballs on him with a pick coming up here. But, I think we're doing all right with wide receivers here. Stephon Diggs, Michael Pittman, Amari Cooper. I feel like that's a solid 1, 2, 3. And then Hunter Renfrow and Sky Moore is a 4 and 5. I'd almost be good not drafting any more wide receivers at this point. I feel like that's a pretty solid set right there. We're obviously going to need another quarterback, need another tight end, need some more running backs. I think it just kind of depends on who slides to us here. But, we're still 8 picks out. I can scroll down a little bit. Which of these guys are kind of jumping out to you for the time being?
Probably Henderson. Those are your running back 4. He would be the guy. And then I'd probably look at tight end maybe.
All right. How are you feeling about TDP? We got we passed on Mitchell when he was sliding a little bit earlier. And then we've got some rumors coming out of San Francisco that they are going to be running a committee this year. Do you think that committee favors TDP or Jeff Wilson? I'm not sure how you're feeling about that situation in San Francisco.
I'm actually pretty much all in on Mitchell, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah, I just thought what he did as a rookie is fun. I mean, why would you not keep using him? So I think just the guys behind him, there's just going to be like three guys behind him, and I don't want to guess on who it is. But yeah, I mean, the rookie makes sense. There's capital there with him, but he's not a guy I've been drafting
last year.
Yeah, he could be Trey Sermon 2.0. So yeah, draft accordingly. So good luck.
So these tight ends here, I got to be honest with you, I'm not a fan of these tight ends at all. I like Gerald Everett, really, really like Gerald Everett, but Robert Tonyan, not a guy that I've really been drafting too much. Happy to see somebody took him out of our queue, so we don't have to worry about him. I do like David Njoku, not crazy about Higbee, not crazy about Fant. I mean, really, it's these two, and then if I miss out on either of them, then I'll pretty much wait until Ingram or Hurst.
See,
how do you feel?
I love Everett. I love Njoku. I love Higbee. I love Fant. I just try to get 2 or 3 of those guys every draft, and just
Everett and Njoku are 2 guys that I've been actively going after, and you know what? Maybe we can do something crazy here. Let's see if he is still on the board.
I know where you're going already, yeah.
Yeah, we already got Amari Cooper. If we can get Njoku here and then get Watson in the 14th, we should probably take Darrell Henderson if he keeps sliding. Let's see. I mean, Watson's been shooting up boards lately. We already made the commitment to. What do you think? It's a little bit. No, we can't. We got to go with Darrell Henderson here. That value is too good to pass up on. talked myself out of that one. But again, Watson's a guy that could slide, but man, it seems like every draft I'm in, I'm seeing him go 5 to 10 spots ahead of ADP. I mean, you remember 2 weeks ago, he started sneaking into the 18th round and the 17th round. And, when I was doing drafts last night, his ADP was at 172. His ADP this morning is at 169. I mean, we're just seeing it by the day. People are preparing for him to play.
Yeah, and I don't think you have to force it though. But I mean, you got Pittman, so you got Matt Ryan there. You got, you went with Myers, so you could go Mac Jones. Like you still have options. What you can do at the quarterback spot. So I don't think you're kind of locked into. But I get what you're saying. I mean, it's a fun tournament build for sure.
Yeah, and we went so heavy on Kansas City with the. With Mahomes, CEH, and Sky Moore, but we don't have a single Broncos player, so we're just throwing that Week 17 stack and correlation to the wind. All in on KC and couldn't care less about the Week 17 matchup. Maybe we'll throw in a late. Is KJ Hamler still out there? He's usually around in the 17th round or so. But here, I'd love this if we get Njoku to slide to us right here.
No, he might. He already has 2 tight ends, so I wouldn't assume he'd take a tight end here.
Yeah. I mean, KJ Osborne.
He might take Watson here, though.
Right. Yeah, because, again, once we make this pick, we got 14 coming back to us. So we would need Watson to really slide to make it to us at 176. But even if we don't get Watson, we've got Cooper and we've got Njoku. I mean, we're already betting on the Cleveland offense a little bit.
Well, you could go, if you wanted to go Watson here, and then you could get, like, Peoples-Jones later, too.
True. Yeah.
So.
All right, let's do that. I like that. And then we still got Evan Ingram and Hayden Hurst to fall back on because we still are thin at tight end with just Cole Kmet here. So this is looking like one, we went.
I think it's hilarious that you refuse to put Higbee there.
Dude, I cannot stand Higbee. I really can't. I don't know what it is about Higbee. My thing with Higbee, and maybe I feel like we've talked about Higbee on a few of these shows. He just hasn't really done much since that. What was it? 2019. He had that late season breakout, and since then. It feels like he's just been drafted at that. Let me look up some numbers here because maybe I'm letting my own bias get the best of me here.
You don't like the offense though, like the Rams. It just feels like it's worth it, and when you're this late in drafts.
I like the offense, but 560 yards last year, 521 yards the year before. I mean, that's gonna give you,
that's
he's also
tight
had
end.
5 touchdowns in back-to-back seasons.
Tight ends.
Yeah. I know. It's just like it just feels like there's no upside with Higbee. Like with Higbee, I feel like you're drafting a guy that's going to finish as a high-end tight end too and has no chance of finishing outside of that, especially now with Allen Robinson there. He is such a bigger threat in the end zone than, kind of similar to what OBJ was last year, where he's going to be a heavy presence in the end zone. I don't know. Maybe, like I said, maybe I'm letting my personal biases get to me, but thank you, Poncho, for drafting Higbee so we don't have to.
I know Justin Herzig's like huge Higbee. I think it's one of his highest owned players. So, I mean, I've listened to him, and yeah, he's kind of, and it makes me feel better about my exposure to Higbee. But it's always fun to get like 2 sides of the story. So
I get it though. I mean, you're betting on the offense, and sometimes you have to have those moments where you take a step back and realize that you're letting your bias get in the way. Like I said, like I was doing with Sky Moore until I had a conversation with Josh Larkey, and he kind of sold me on it. But Higbee's just a guy that I just haven't been able to get behind for whatever reason.
I think his was like more the red zone targets or something. Like he was just missing those just barely missing touchdowns. So like that's you're hoping he falls into the end zone 6 or 7 times this year.
Yeah, I'm looking that up real quickly because I'm interested in seeing that. I didn't really peg him as oh my gosh, you're not kidding. 18 targets in the red zone last year. That's up there with Mike Evans and Mike Williams, DK Metcalf, Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, no Beckham Jr., right? Like to start the season. Yeah. So he's going to be a red zone. And that's what like the underdog scoring strategy. I think that's what like kind of locks you into. I mean, you could go Cincinnati there too, Hurst.
I thought about it. Yeah, we've already got Boyd and Mixon. Ingram's just the guy that I'm just buying the dip on. I know people are going to overreact to him dropping 1 pass in camp, and not that we got him at a huge discount there.
See, this is where you see Kendrick Bourne on the list. So look at Kendrick Bourne. Let's click on him. Look at his numbers from last year. 800 yards,
Yeah.
5 touchdowns, 125 yards rushing. And now look at Myers.
Almost exactly. Well, I mean,
You can't look at him, I guess, but you got to type him in.
not weird. Oh yeah,
So
866. Yeah, I mean
the
the
Bourne
difference
actually
was,
had like 100 yards total more and 3 touchdowns more.
yeah, the huge difference was the targets, 126 targets to 70 targets. But yeah, Bourne, I mean, he does a lot more after the catch than Myers does. That's for sure. So I mean,
That was my whole point. Is like that's why I don't own any Myers, and that's why Bourne's probably like 15% owned guy for me because he's just free.
so here we got 3 picks left here. I mean, I feel pretty confident with these 2 quarterbacks. I mean, obviously, if Deshaun Watson doesn't play, this whole team is getting nuked anyway. So might as well just assume that Deshaun Watson is going to play. And even, I mean, the thing that would really suck is if he gets an 8-week suspension, because then we're looking at week 8. We have no quarterback with Patrick Mahomes on bye. So looking at the quarterbacks that are still available, I'll just throw these guys in the queue so we can kind of keep an eye on them if they slide. I might be taking a QB3 if we make it all the way to round 18 and one of these guys are still standing. Not feeling too great about these tight ends, but I don't think that they're weak enough that we have to add a tight end 3. I mean, if Hurst slides here, I'd be okay adding Hurst, and then
What about Hooper? Do you like Hooper? Because you could go Hooper Tannehill too.
Hooper's already
gone. Yeah,
Hooper went 15-12. Logan Thomas is gone. It's kind of shocking seeing Hurst still slide this far. I like Hurst here. I like Darrell Williams a lot too.
I would take Hurst 100% here.
All right, cool. So we are good on tight ends. We are completely done with tight ends here. We'll take one of these guys if they slide to the 14th round. We're pretty set on wide receivers. Definitely need some running backs though. So, well, I guess we've got Joe Mixon, so we don't really want to handcuff. But Chris Evans is a guy that I've been smashing in the 17th round. Like, I feel like almost every single one of my drafts I've been taking Chris Evans recently. Reports out of Cincinnati are that he is taking on that RB2 role, that he has passed up Samaje Perine. And we know Joe Mixon, he was healthy last year, but still missed a game, and he's got a history of injuries. So he's a guy that I've really been liking lately. Jerick McKinnon.
I think really McKissick. I think McKissick's a good pick. I think Evans. You're right on Evans. Foreman's decent. I like Sony. I've talked about him. D'Ernest Johnson's really fun, especially if you got Watson and they don't trade him. Then you have a little bit of correlation there.
Yeah.
Drake's getting talked up something like he's healthy, but I still wouldn't pick him really.
I mean, Drake's a guy that I've been, I just see him profiling as a guy, if we're going to expect Josh McDaniels to implement a similar offense to what they ran in New England. Kenyon Drake is James White. And I mean, we saw what James White did. Kenyon Drake is still relatively young. I believe he's 28 years old, and he profiles as a very good pass catcher. I think Josh Jacobs is going to get the early down work, similar to what we've seen with Damian Harris. But I think Kenyon Drake could be, this is only half PPR, so you're not getting a full point per reception. But, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if he's getting, 5-6 targets a game.
All right.
We've got Hamler in here, but, I think we got too many other needs.
Yeah, I'd probably go running back here, pick your favorite one, and then hope one of those quarterbacks fall. If they don't, then you just go all in on Watson and take another running back, maybe. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to think. We got Jacoby Myers. I think that's the only Patriot we got. So, if we throw in Sony Michel, though, we get that little bit of week 17 correlation there with Michel and Jacoby. And normally I'd be taking Chris Evans here, but we already drafted Joe Mixon. I mean, how do you feel about handcuffing? I don't, 6 or 7 episodes into the show, I don't think we've talked about that much.
So grab them both running backs. I think it's
we got Joe Mixon already.
Yeah, I think it's doable. Like I don't hate it. It doesn't.
All right, imagine we're not on a show. You're drafting by yourself. This is the team you got so far. Are you taking Sony Michel or Chris Evans here? I love them both.
I'd probably take Ryan Tannehill and just see what one falls.
All right, I don't hate that either. That's what we're doing. All right.
I just forced you into something bad. Sorry.
No. It was unlikely that Tannehill was going to make it back to us, so I don't mind doing that at all. And sometimes this is the way to play it, where you don't have a really strong take on any position that you need. Take the player that you like, and then just take whoever slides to you next. Because now we're 8 picks away. Chances are we're guaranteed one of these 4 running backs. let's throw some other guys in here just in case. Samir White, is that still? I remember a while back you were big on Samir White. Are you cooling off a little bit now with the Kenyon Drake reports, or is he somebody you're still targeting?
Yeah, I was more thinking Drake wasn't going to be ready for the season, but
Yeah,
I still think White's like a great kind of last round kind of handcuff, hoping you get the playoff push with him.
yeah.
Like Dearness Johnson was my favorite out of that bunch.
Yeah, and he just went. Now the fear with Dearness Johnson is just, I mean, he's not your typical backup. He needs two injuries ahead of him to really like. I think
Or a
Dearness Johnson
trade.
is,
I think that's
or a trade. Yeah,
the rumors were that somebody's gonna trade for him. He's
yeah,
gonna go somewhere else. But
because this team also went out and drafted Jerome Ford, who's a very good running back. I mean, Nick Chubb is clearly the guy, but then Kareem Hunt is a great running back. I mean, Dearness Johnson would be a starter on a lot of teams in the NFL.
yeah,
Jerome
put him
Ford
on
would
put him on
be
the Texans, right?
right. Yeah, I mean that's a backfield that I've really been avoiding at all costs. I know I've heard some strong arguments for Dameon Pierce, but I've just been avoiding the Texans backfield as a whole. Well, here we got a quick question here. We'll just take whichever one of these running backs falls to us. I'm actually going to nudge Beatty over Kenyon Drake if he makes it down. We got Noah in the chat saying, what do you guys prioritize the most out of ADP value, roster construction, stacking, or player takes? That's a good question, man. I think a lot of times it just comes down to my mood. Sometimes I go into a draft saying, hey, I'm going to stack the heck out of this one, and sometimes I say, let me just gobble up value, and sometimes I say, I just want to draft a team full of my guys. But why don't you take a stab at this one, James?
Yeah, I think player takes is definitely last. Like that's the one I don't think you should put ahead of anything really. Um, and we both work with football guys, and what's football guys been built on? Value based drafting, right? Like we love to look for value, and that's kind of where my whole best ball mindset is centered around. So I'm looking for values. I'm volume drafting, so I'm always kind of looking for a deal. So I think roster construction's a big deal. Stacking's a big deal. So I think you have to, all three of those I would say are pretty important. And I would just kind of, I guess fourth would be player takes, where you just maybe have two guys like we've had here in our queue, and we've kind of just like, hey, yeah, let's do this way because of this. So I think that's kind of how you want to make those decisions.
Yeah, and another thing I'll say with stacking, and if I'm doing sit and go drafts, I don't care nearly as much about stacking, but I think you have to look at the weekly element in these tournaments where, you kind of look at it like from a DFS standpoint, where you really want to have those spike weeks. And in order to get those, it helps a lot if you have a stack. So when I'm drafting in the puppy or BBM or whatever it may be, I'm much more prone to not necessarily reach for a stack, but try to work out stacks a little bit. When I'm doing sit and goes, where it's just, most points at the end of the season, I could not care less about stacking whatsoever.
Yeah, no, agreed.
And now here is a fun question too from Craig Furt saying, I thought fantasy football was about setting lineups weekly, picking up free agents, making trades to improve your team. Best ball lets you do none of those things. And I hear this from people all the time. There are a lot of people out there that just dislike best ball. And I understand it for all the reasons that Craig laid out here. Personally, I mean, making money is obviously fun at the end of the season when you get a chance to win some money back on the leagues that you've drafted. But really, for me, I just look at this as kind of like training for redraft season. Like, I crush my redraft drafts because of the hundreds of best ball drafts that I did leading up to that.
I don't know. Most people will say why they like best ball. I think is just they fall in love with just drafting. They've always liked that, and that's why what's just kind of attract them to fantasy football from the get go. Feel like you can also like picking up free agents. Kind of in my life, kind of became like working that waiver wire. Just became such a like it's like a job, and I kind of despised it after a while. So, I mean, you just kind of whatever place you are in life, you figure out what works best for you. So I think there's a place for both. So you can kind of, I would say, try best ball, see what you think. And I think picking up free agents and the waiver wire and doing all that, you can still do that with best ball, and that's why like rounds 15, 16, 17, 18, like those last rounds, that's basically your waiver wire. You're trying to predict just in the future. So I don't know. I would give it a try and then kind of see where it goes from there.
I think a big thing too, especially for analysts, is we end up in so many leagues. I don't know. I don't want to speak for you, James, but I'm in like 15 leagues that I have to manage, which is nothing. That pales in comparison to some of the other people out there that I've talked to that are in, hundreds of leagues. And like you said, trying to, set up your waivers if you're in 2 or 3 leagues, piece of cake. You don't think twice about it. But when you're doing that in 15 or 20 leagues, I got to sit down on Tuesday nights, and I'm spending hours just putting in all of my claims. So I look at best ball as, I'm pretty much tapped out on managed leagues. If somebody really important calls me up and invites me to a league, I'll find a way to squeeze it in. But, I'm not just at the point where I'm just saying yes to every single league invite anymore. But with best ball, it's great because it doesn't matter what I'm doing. It could be middle of the day. I'm in the middle of work. Somebody sends me a best ball link, and I could just hop in and just kind of draft and have some fun with it. And, yeah, I mean, there's a time and a place for everything. Fantasy football has Dynasty now, and Best Ball, and DFS, and Redraft, and we're doing a Guillotine League draft right now, James, that you and I are in. I mean, there's so many different formats to try and play. I like them all. They're all fun for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's why we are on a hour football stream, because we like it no matter what. So
yep. And we got DJ Mitchell in the chat. Once I got into best ball, I never looked back. The upside of generational wealth is why you play. And that's it, really. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all just chasing that $2 million, right? You're not going to win $2 million playing in your home fantasy league. Let's take a quick look here. Some of the players that I wanted to call out that I expected to see really shooting up in ADP actually slid a little bit. The one was Trey Lance, all the way down to 84. That's below his current ADP. Isaiah McKenzie, I didn't get a chance to see when he was drafted. Did you happen to see that one, James?
Yeah, I wasn't paying attention to that one either. So I don't think he went crazy high. Yeah, right there you go, right there.
181.
16th round.
Yeah, so looks like we were in a draft room with some pretty reasonable minds that weren't overreacting to recent cap news. So props to everybody in this chat for keeping it together. Before we sign off, James, anything else? I know we're going to be off the next 2 weeks, just traveling a little bit. I'll be recharging and gearing up for the season. Kind of hard to believe, but 1 week from Thursday, we're going to be watching preseason football. Can you believe it?
Well, it's going to be awesome to have something back on the field. And yeah, so I think it's a fun time of year right now. So just enjoy it. I probably drafted way too long this off season, so I don't know. I have to reevaluate next year to maybe start a little later. But yeah, just enjoy your families, enjoy that part of your life too. And then this is just fun at the end of the day. So I would say August 1st, look for that Puppy 3 that's supposed to be dropped by Underdog. So I think that's the next big thing coming out. So that I can think of.
Now, do you know slow draft should be wrapping up pretty soon? I think they wrap those up like 2 weeks prior to kickoff, 3 weeks prior to kickoff, right?
Yeah, not exactly. Like the clock drops down too. So yeah, probably about a week before, I think.
All right. Oh, that's right. Yeah, if you're in a slow draft like a week before the season, then they cut it to like an hour or 2 hours. I remember that. Cool. Well, just want to remind you guys, if you haven't already, sign up for Best Ball. You can use promo code Footballguys, and that will get you a 100% deposit match on your initial deposit up to $100. So UnderdogFantasy.com, or you can download Underdog Fantasy in the App Store. When you sign up, use promo code Footballguys. James and I, like I said, will be off the next 2 weeks, but we will be back in 3 weeks, Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, and the Football Guys Best Ball Show. We'll see you then. Thank you for tuning in.